Hey there, Gacha Gang. Kawaii50 here with another FGO servant breakdown. Here to talk about our newest 4-star ruler, Lady Justice herself, Astraea. We're going to be going over all aspects of this character's kit and try to figure out the best way to fit her into your ever-expanding roster of servants. If this video ends up helping you out, be sure to go ahead, like, and subscribe. Astraea is of the ruler class, making her naturally tanky by virtue of that alone. She's got a quick Arts Buster deck and a single target Arts type Noble Phantasm. Her 11,531 hit points would be solid on its own, but considering she's a ruler, that HP is going to go a much longer way. Her 9,734 attack is a different story though. Even though Astraea has a pretty solid attack for a 4-star servant, with her class she also faces the disadvantage of not dealing extra damage based on class advantage. So you're going to have to take into account that you're probably going to be in for a longer fight. Her NP per hit at a 0.43% is honestly pretty solid for her. Her Arts cards have 4 hits, and she is able to Arts Brave Chain off of her own Noble Phantasm. So, NP gain, while we're gonna want to buff that up a bit, as we naturally want to with an Arts Servant, it's not going to be a huge issue. Her Star Absorption, of course, is fairly average for any servant, so Star Gather works well on her. Astraea's first skill is Blessing of the Scale, rank A+. This increases one ally's attack, defense, and NP gain by 10 to 20% for 3 turns, and this is on a relatively short 5-turn cooldown at rank 10. I definitely recommend maxing this skill second. Not only are you going to be able to use this skill to target Astraea herself in order to increase her defense and damage, but you're also going to be able to use it on any other ally in a pinch. If you're, say, bringing along some servants for a mixed wave of enemies, you can go ahead and chuck this on your damage dealer who is able to deal class advantage damage, and you're going to overall help their DPS with your ruler class servant. Astraea's second skill is Mana Burst Star, rank A+. This increases her Arts card effectiveness by 20 to 30% and grants her 10 to 30 critical stars, and this is on a 5-turn cooldown as well. The only reason I recommend maxing this skill last is because the Arts card effectiveness boost only lasts for 1 turn. If it lasted for 3 turns, I would consider this skill ranked far higher, but more often than not, you're only going to be using this skill when you need to use Astraea's Noble Phantasm. Astraea's final skill is Star's Judgment, rank A. This skill consumes 5 critical stars, but offers a slew of benefits in return. It has a flat 20% NP gauge steroid, increases Astraea's critical star gather by 300 to 500%, and increases her crit damage by 30 to 50%. And this is on the lowest cooldown of all her skills at 4. The main reason you want to level this skill up is for that short cooldown. Yes, it only lasts a single turn, much like her previously mentioned Mana Burst skill, but the damage it is able to provide Astraea is honestly a lot better. Since rulers don't have class advantage, being able to provide them crits makes them far stronger, and being able to provide them critical damage on top of that is a huge boost. You've seen this with Jalter. Increasing her overall crit damage has made her an absolutely monstrous damage dealer. The same logic applies to rulers, and therefore also applies to Astraea. Before we move on to the Noble Phantasm, it actually is important to mention some of Astraea's passives, because they do synergize well with her kit. The main important ones are Independent Action rank A and Territory Creation rank A. This grants Astraea an additional 10% critical strength, which works well with the third skill we just talked about, and 10% Arts card effectiveness, which helps her overall main card source of damage and her NP gain. First, let me show you what I wish Astraea's Noble Phantasm was. Okay, now let's talk about what it actually is. Her actual Noble Phantasm is Custos Morum, and this is a single target Noble Phantasm. We're going to be talking about the upgraded version. We're going to have to wait a little bit for this on NA. It is predicted to arrive around December of 2022. But the buff that Astraea gets to her Noble Phantasm is very important. Not only is the overall damage increased from 900 to 1500% to 1200 to 1800%, which means your NP1 Astraea is the equivalent of an NP2 Astraea at this time after the rank up, but it also grants her critical stars, which she can use with her third skill, and also after rank up, it will provide ignore invincibility to Astraea for 1 turn, and that will happen before the damage is dealt, meaning invincibility and evade will no longer matter on turns Astraea uses her Noble Phantasm. Astraea's Overcharge effect deals extra damage to evil enemies, of which there are many in FGO, and this is going to be a 150% to 200% damage increase based on overcharge level. When it comes to meting out justice with a Noble Phantasm, Astraea actually has the stats to back it up. When it comes to craft essences for Astraea, we want to focus on Arts Card Effectiveness for damage, NP gain to charge up to that Noble Phantasm faster, and Critical Strength to deal with the fact that Astraea is mainly going to deal neutral damage. For our freebie option, I cannot recommend Painting Summer enough. This is a truly fantastic craft essence that grants Arts Card Effectiveness, NP gain, as well as a starting NP gauge to boot. So Astraea is going to have a pretty good head start on using Custos Morum. Another ending still remains a premier option for Arts Crit Servants, granting Arts Card Effectiveness as well as a significantly increased bit of damage to critical hit strength. But if you're okay with sacrificing a bit of critical strength for a starting NP gauge, go ahead and give Astraea New Beginnings. Arts Card Effectiveness, critical hit strength, and a starting NP gauge of 40 to 50% means she's not only going to be closer to using her Noble Phantasm, but those arts crits you're fishing for to charge her NP gauge are going to deal additional damage. And finally, Master seeking to truly destroy evil can look forward to Spring Cord down the line. It's going to be a little bit for NA, but this definitely deserves mention. This grants Arts Card Effectiveness, NP gain, as well as an NP Overcharge boost, bumping it up by 2 levels. Since Astraea's Overcharge effect is related to dealing damage to evil enemies, this is likely the craft essence you will want to equip her with when fighting a challenge quest boss of the evil alignment. When you're picking allies for Astraea, keep in mind that she is an arts-type servant, so you want your Castorias, your Tamamo no Mais, or your Caster Gilgameshes, for example, in order to bump up her Arts Card Effectiveness as high as possible. Arts Card servants are really good at playing off of each other, so everyone should be using their Noble Phantasm frequently. However, there are several other allies worth mentioning to bring along with Astraea, and I picked these allies for a few reasons. You will see a smattering of allies that deal extra damage to evil enemies, help Astraea's NP gain, or help Astraea overall stay alive longer. Since she's a ruler, any bit of boost to healing, guts, anything like that is going to be very powerful for her, because her battles will likely be battles of attrition. Let's mention some freebie options, starting with Charles Henri Sanson. The main reason we mention Sanson is because he has that Executioner A++ skill, which deals extra damage to evil enemies. His Human Study skill also deals extra damage to humanoids, so you can bring him along with Astraea as a secondary damage dealer against some more powerful evil servants. Hohenheim is an incredible option for Astraea, mainly because of his Philosopher's Stone skill. Not only is Philosopher's Stone going to grant her a massive increase to her NP gain, but it's also going to give her guts, allowing her to stick around the battlefield longer. Chuck an Arts Card's Effectiveness boost on top of that, and you have a very potent ally for Astraea. Pretty much any ruler in the game can benefit from having Asclepius on their side, and Astraea is no exception. But she is able to gain a little bit more off of Asclepius than, say, your average Buster-centric ruler like, say, St. Martha. Asclepius is able to provide a NP gain boost. Since Astraea is mainly an arts-type servant, this is going to benefit her more than other servants. He also has the ability to cleanse debuffs from Astraea, which she is unable to do, and his God of Medicine skill massively increases her healing and survival potential. Nightingale Santa is also an excellent option for Astraea, providing her with HP recovery, attack, critical strength, guts, as well as an NP damage boost. All of this is rolled into her powerful archer package. You are going to have to, unfortunately, sacrifice a little bit of Star Gather, considering archers have a naturally high star weight, but since Astraea has a Star Gather skill of her own, you should be able to get the burst damage when you really need it. And finally, I definitely want to give a big shout out to our evil slaying saber, Benny Enma. Benny Enma's Star Basket skills are unique and powerful, and provide a slew of benefits for Astraea in the forms of an attack boost, NP gauge boost, HP recovered, and buff removal resist, and also provides a ton of detriments for the enemy, including decreasing their defense, decreasing their critical rate, sealing their noble phantasm, at the cost of recovering them a measly 1000 HP, which is easily removed in a single attack. For Astraea's command codes, let's keep in mind that she is a dueling and crit-focused servant through and through. So let's go ahead and do everything we can to buff up her Star Gather where we need it, and critical damage when we end up drawing cards that we don't necessarily want to have. Of course, you want all of that Star Gather focused on her arts cards, so give her something like Immature Illusionary Command Seal, so she can crit with those cards and generate more Noble Phantasm off of them. As for her other cards, you can go ahead and go full crit damage on that as well. It is going to be the main way you are going to be able to overall boost her damage while she's dealing all those neutrals. So look for something like Mistress of the Heavens for her Buster cards to get a 25% crit bonus, or if you want to use a lower rarity one, Command Seal of a Cardinal Minded Retainer works on her Buster cards as well. If you're looking to increase damage on her quick cards, look no further than Non-Existent Phantasmal Horse. Focus deep on that crit, and you will find that Astraea honestly deals a decent amount of damage, especially considering how many enemies are evil. Overall, gang, by merits of being a 4-star ruler class alone, Astraea is a powerful choice for new players to add to their roster. If you don't have any sort of ruler in your roster at all, you should be rolling for Astraea. You want to, if possible, have one of every single class of servant, so you can use them in any and all situations to help you get through all of the content the game is throwing at us. If you already have a ruler class servant, however, Astraea is a fine addition, but by no means a must roll. She does have some very, very powerful bonuses. She's able to deal a lot of damage to evil type enemies, and her survivability makes her a prime candidate for challenge quests. But when it comes to general content, she does unfortunately have, while she has all the ruler buffs, she also has all the ruler weaknesses. She will likely be doing neutral damage most of the time. You'll need to heavily rely on crits when it comes to getting any sort of damage out of Astraea, and you're gonna more often than not chuck her in your back line as a last resort. Astraea, by no means bad, but she is a ruler, and you need to keep that in mind with all decisions you make when it comes to rolling. But of course, I want to know what you all think, so let me know your thoughts about Astraea down in the comment section below. I know a lot of players were really excited to roll for her because, well, she is Luvia. So if you are one of those people, why don't you go ahead and share your love for Luvia down below. This is the place to do it. If you want to share your love for Luvia somewhere else, my Discord is of course open in the description below. If you think I'm doing a good job, you can always check out my Patreon, and I am streaming regularly on Twitch on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 7 p.m. EST. We played a lot of FGO this past week. I'm sure some of you saw that on the YouTube channel, so I hope you'll continue to stop by and enjoy all of the games we're able to play together. This is Kawaii50, hoping you all have a phenomenal day. I'll see you all in the next video.